Hi, Mr. Singh. Laura Stone, Globe and Mail. I think a lot of Canadians watching this right now might be a bit baffled by the political posturing that's going on. You've propped up the government for 2 years. Now all of a sudden they're terrible because of some vague notion of corporate greed, and you're refusing to say whether you'll bring down the government at the first opportunity. What is the point of all this, sir?
Holy moly, what an absolutely embarrassing display from a so-called political leader. Like we saw today from Jagmeet Singh during his very first news conference since the announcement of the end of the supply and confidence agreement with the Liberals. This guy, his programming must have been set to repeat, or it was broken, or this was the only line that he thought that he needed to say, because every reporter's question got this exact same answer of him ripping up the agreement. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, here's just a little snippet of it.
And so we decided to rip up the agreement. Well, as I said, I've ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau, but I've ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau. But because I ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau, we have ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau. We've ripped it up. We've ripped up the agreement. We have ripped up this agreement. We've ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau. I will be clear again. We have absolutely ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau.
Now, I know the audio recording was a little bit spotty, which was on their end, just so everybody knows, so I don't want to see any comments about the audio quality. But was it clear enough to you that he ripped up the agreement? He might have to tell you guys a few more times, because as I said, that was the only thing he said basically to every single question. And the only reporter to actually push back initially was Brian Lilley of the Toronto Sun. Now, in the opening clip, you did hear Laura Stone, but she followed Brian Lilley. And again, he was the only one that actually challenged Jagmeet, and this was his response to him.
Brian Lilley with the Toronto Sun. You've made it very clear that you don't have faith in the Liberal government to deliver for Canadians. So a simple question, hopefully a simple answer. Do you have confidence in the Trudeau government?
Well, we've ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau. That speaks for itself. I've ripped up the agreement, and I know that means an election is now more likely. We will look at every vote as it comes and make a decision as it comes. I'm not going to presuppose the outcome of a vote before it happens. We will look at each vote and make our decision as it comes. But let us be very clear. I am absolutely aware that ripping up the agreement with Justin Trudeau means an election is more likely, and that sets up the question for what is this election going to be about. I am very strongly in belief that this election is about two competing visions for our country. The vision of Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives is a vision to cut the things that you want. They're bragging about wanting to cut healthcare and destroy universal public healthcare as we know it. So the choice is, do you want Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives to make our healthcare system one where you've got to pay out of pocket to see a doctor, and only those who've got money can get healthcare that they need? Or you Democrats who believe very fundamentally that it should not matter how much you have in your wallet to determine the quality of care and how fast you get it. That is a choice in this upcoming election. What vision of Canada Canadians want?
You've said about a dozen times at least that you've ripped up the agreement and that makes an election more likely. But you've been asked several times and you won't answer. Do you have confidence in the Trudeau government as they stand now?
I will be clear again. We have absolutely ripped up the agreement with Justin Trudeau, and that means an election is more likely.
Clear. That's not clear. You're
and an election, whenever that election comes, we'll be ready to fight it. And the vision around that election is going to be an important one. Canadians will have to make a choice.
But can we get an answer?
Corporate-controlled Conservatives, they're going to let their corporate buddies rip you off even more, or New Democrats are going to save you money on your rent and your groceries. That's a choice that Canadians will have to make.
Can we get an answer?
I will look at any vote that comes before us, and we will make a decision in the best interest of Canadians, as any minority government normally operates.
Now, the funny thing about Brian Lilley being the reporter to initiate pushing back against Jagmeet and what he's saying and actually trying to get him to answer a question properly is Brian Lilley was also the one who broke the news that Jagmeet was ending the supply and confidence agreement. And a lot of the Liberal reporters, in particular the CBC, seem pretty butthurt about that.
Liberals to govern as a majority is over. Jagmeet Singh's office officially informed the Prime Minister's office of their decision to end this agreement 8 minutes ago. At 12:47 p.m. is what I'm told by a senior government official. This was minutes after the news was tweeted by a reporter with Sun Media announcing that the governing arrangement had ended.
Like, come on. Look how butthurt David Cochran is to know that Brian Lilly found this out before he did. But in all honesty, this is what we need our reporters to do. We need them to hold these politicians to the fire, especially when all they do is keep rinse and repeating the same answer to any question. And after Brian Lilly did this, Laura Stone pushed back, and as you heard in the opening statement, and this was his response to her question and then her follow-up.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Laura Stone, Globe and Mail. I think a lot of Canadians watching this right now might be a bit baffled by the political posturing that's going on. You've propped up the government for 2 years. Now, all of a sudden, they're terrible because of some vague notion of corporate greed. And you're refusing to say whether you'll bring down the government at the first opportunity. What is the point of all this, sir?
We have been very clear. We accomplished some significant things for Canadians. We got dental care for millions of Canadians. We're able to get the first steps on pharmacare. We've been able to get things done that are going to make people's lives better. But it became very clear to me, after having got these important things done, that people need more. And Justin Trudeau is unwilling, does not have the courage, doesn't have the strength, and is too beholden to corporations to stop big corporations from ripping off Canadians, which is driving up the cost of groceries and driving up the cost of rent. So we've ripped up the agreement, and we're going to move into a vote-by-vote basis. So any decision that comes before us, we'll make based on what's in the best interest of Canadians. But let us be clear, this absolutely means an election is more likely. And that election is going to be about an important choice between the cuts of Pierre Poilievre or New Democrats who want to build a better future for you.
You announced that you've ripped up this agreement or canceled it about 5 days after Mr. Poilievre challenged you to do so. Why did you only come out after the Conservatives put pressure on you, and was it a mistake for you to not do this earlier?
I will never, ever take advice from Pierre Poilievre, who wants to destroy our healthcare system, who wants to cut pensions for seniors, who wants to let his corporate buddies rip off Canadians even more. I will never, ever take advice from Pierre Poilievre. Clearly, and my team can give you some more details on this, we filmed this video way before that came out. And to be honest with you, to be frank with you, Pierre Poilievre has been saying to tear up the agreement since 2 years ago. So no, it has nothing to do with Pierre Poilievre at all. It's a silly claim of Pierre Poilievre, which he often makes and something that he likes to make up. But it is an important choice that's in front of Canadians. We have ripped up this agreement. We've made this decision. We've gotten things done for Canadians. And now there will be a choice for Canadians to make. What type of country do we want to build? Do we want to build a country where Pierre Poilievre throws fuel on the fire of corporate greed, lets his corporate buddies have free reign to rip you off, to rent evict you, to jack up your rents, to jack up the price of your groceries? Or a vision where New Democrats give people hope, where we lower the price of your groceries, where we lower the cost of your rent, where we say no to corporate greed that is hurting Canadians, and we say yes to people. That's a choice in front of Canadians, and that's a choice I'm presenting today.
I really wonder if this guy even listens to the words he himself is saying, because he just admitted that Pierre's been telling him for the past 2 years to get out of this costly coalition because life is unaffordable for Canadians. Yet now magically he's saying because he's ripped up the supply and confidence agreement, he's going to somehow bring down costs of rent and groceries when he hasn't been able to do that with the Liberals for the past 2 years. Like, does that make any sense? And this is something actually the next reporter questions him on, saying, you've been complaining about the Liberals and their failure for the past year or so. Why now?
Thanks for taking our questions. You've mentioned corporate greed many times as the reason why you're exiting the deal. I feel like everything you've said today and yesterday were things that you were saying 1 year ago or 2 years ago about the Liberals. So what is new and specific about these criticisms that were serious enough to warrant leaving the deal right now?
And this is actually something that Vashi also questioned him on when she had him on a show just earlier today.
I have to also ask you, Mr. Singh, why now? And in particular, you know, I've done so many interviews with you. I'm sure you're sick of them, where I ask you the question, like, this is the way in which you're describing the government. Why are you still keeping them in power? I don't understand what changed, saliently over the last number of days or weeks that led you to make this decision now versus, let's say, 6 months ago? You point to corporate greed, for example, particularly in the grocery sector. Food prices were at their highest over a year ago, and the government wasn't doing much even then. Why didn't that force you to make this decision? Is this more about really polling and your electoral chances? And some would accuse in the Conservatives your pension.
Not at all. First of all, let's put that to rest. That's a lie being propagated by Pierre Poilievre, who's, I think, got his full pension when he was like 31. So I don't know. He wants to cut people's pensions. Speaking of pensions, he wants to cut seniors' pensions. I mean, that's what we should be talking about, the fact that we want to defend and strengthen people's pensions, and he wants to cut them. I think people should know about that. But when it comes to decision, we always knew that at some point we would have to make this decision, that we weren't going to stay in this forever, and we would make that decision based on a whole host of factors. What we saw was that we got a lot of things done. We were able to get the dental care program out the door. Pharmacare steps have been passed in Parliament. So a lot of the work that we wanted to do is done. And it became very clear, more and more evidence mounted that the Liberals were simply too beholden to corporate interest.
What's the evidence?
And that's not going to meet the needs of Canadians.
With due respect, what is the recent evidence that underscores that point that didn't already exist 6 or 8 months ago?
You see how giddy he got when he was thinking about his pension? Like, she mentioned pension. He goes, "Oh, my pension? No, not at all. I'm not thinking about that. No, it couldn't be that." Like, she comes with the facts. Grocery prices were way worse last year. He's been trying to peddle this whole thing the past few months, where he goes to the grocery stores and he stands outside and he says, "Oh, this bag of potatoes," which is really apples.
A sack of potatoes, one bag of potatoes.
And this olive oil, these are so expensive now, you can't afford it. They were worse off a year ago, as she stated, and you didn't do diddly squat then. Now a year later, as you get closer to your pension, now you kind of want to stir the pot a little bit, eh? But in all fashion, he dodges that question by bringing up Pierre, he's been a politician for 20 some odd years now. He is set in that regard with his own pension. But then he mentions the rail workers and how that really pushed him over the top. And now a new election potentially could happen, and people can decide who they want to make things more affordable. And again, she pushes back.
But again, with great respect, all of the stuff that you lay out, we have been talking about, you and I, you and other politicians. There has been accountability directed at the government and questions about why they aren't doing more on those issues that you talk about affordability, about grocery prices, about corporate interests for over a year. Like, it was particularly difficult for Canadians. I mean, inflation has edged down, but prices are up 20% over the last 3 years, and they were super high a year ago. My question isn't hypothetical. You are raising the idea that the CN rail dispute and their handling of it really was it a turning point? Like, again, I'm not clear why this wasn't a decision you didn't make earlier, unless now you see that your personal interest is better served and you didn't before.
And this is why she's the GOAT. She's the greatest. She just doesn't take the bullshit. She kind of sifts through all the lies that he's saying there and points out the hypocrisy of what he's saying. But now he's going to claim that he's done what he needed to do. He got what he needed through with the help of the Liberals, and now he washes his hands because he did what he needed to do, and that's why he broke the agreement. And she says, well, no, nothing is actually finished. Nothing is concrete. And he tries to throw it on the Liberals, saying, no. At this point, if nothing gets through, it's their fault. And she again calls him out on his BS.
Well, like I mentioned, we got work done. We got things done, things completed. We wanted to make sure dental care was completed. To at least the second phase include seniors, and a lot of that program was done over the summer. So that completed
but it's not totally
a significant
done.
part of
and
our
neither
agreement.
is Pharmacare. It's
so
still before the Senate.
That was really important. This summer, actually, we got the portal. We got some major changes. So we got a lot of work done. And it became very clear with their approach towards workers in the rail situation that, again, another example of caving to corporate interests. And so we made it very clear that they're no longer able to meaningfully tackle the problems that people are going through. We've torn up the agreement because they're too weak to take on the Conservatives, and they're too weak and beholden to corporate interest to stop what is the major concern, what people are going through right now. The high cost of living is being driven by corporate greed, and the Liberals aren't doing anything about it.
I guess I would just point out that both pharmacare and dental care are not completed in the vein that you saw them. There's even still a legislative process that's unfolding where pharmacare is concerned. I also wanted to ask you about
on pharmacare, in terms of the legislative process in the House, that's completed.
Yes, before
it's
the
a Senate
Senate
vote, which obviously we don't have any influence over.
No, but things can happen. You never know. I'm just saying that's not completely done. I also...
It's voted in the House. That bill is done.
So you think for sure it's going to happen? You trust the Liberals to make sure it happens? Because I think the argument you're making
that's on them.
Yeah, but
if the argument if Justin Trudeau doesn't move forward on pharmacare, that's because Justin Trudeau chose not to. But in terms of
the argument you're making, sure, but the argument you're making to Canadians is essentially you stayed in it as long as you did to get things done. So if those things aren't done, why aren't you continuing to stay in it unless there's some kind of political interest in it for you to move to a different position, which is what the Liberals essentially are accusing you of. They say blatantly, Karina Gold on this program last night, you put your own interests ahead of Canadians.
Now, this might be the only time I actually agree with Karina Gould that he clearly is putting his own interests ahead of Canadians. But here you see Vashi peppering him with those jabs on his talking points because he's basically half-assed everything. He says, "Oh, we got it done." Well, nothing is set in stone yet. You've kind of put your foot through the door, but you haven't made it all the way through. And he's just saying, well, if it doesn't happen, now that's on the Liberals. Well, no, the point of your supply and confidence agreement was so that you could get whatever you wanted basically enshrined. And you're failed at that because you broke it and some of the things aren't fully set. And then this is when Vashi doubles down and makes him talk about his pension yet again. And she says, on the record, come February, are you going to get a pension? And just listen to his response.
Can I ask you to clarify on the question of the pension? Because it is an argument that the Conservatives are continually using. Are you eligible for a pension in February because of when you were elected in the by-election? And has that factored into your decision-making in all of this, or will it factor into your decision-making in perhaps prompting an election? Can I just get you on the record on that?
Not at all. It's a ludicrous suggestion. I'm obviously going to get reelected in my riding. I'm not worried about that at all. This is a silly argument being bought by Conservatives, but it's on purpose.
Yeah, it's on purpose because it's a fact. That's the only reason that you've been in the supply and confidence agreement is because it will bring you to your pension by the next election if nothing happened. Now, again, you've torn up the agreement, which even Vashi says that's just a formality.
But ripping up the agreement is just ending the formality of it. You explicitly said, for example, in that video, that you will continue to consider whether or not to support the government on matters of confidence on a case-by-case basis. Again, I'll put the question to you. You have told Canadians they are weak, they are selfish, that they have abandoned the very people who put them in office. You just described a host of reasons why you don't want to be a part of any formal agreement. How can you reconcile for Canadians watching now that you're still willing to vote with them and keep them in power on a case-by-case basis?
Well, I don't know what the votes are going to be. So we'll see what the vote is, and I'll make a decision based on what comes before me, using the lens of, is this in the best interest of Canadians? Depends on what the votes are and depends on what comes before us. But we know that this does certainly mean that an election is more likely, and that election will be about a choice. People are frustrated and done with the Liberals and Justin Trudeau. So it'll be between Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative cuts or New Democrats' hope and building up the programs that people need.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but there's no hope with you guys. The hope is long gone. The fact that you helped the Liberals destroy the country has basically gotten rid of all the hope for the NDP and the Liberal Party. So the hopeful party would be the Conservatives at this point, which is why you see a vast majority of places turning conservative, or at least leaning more conservative. The fact that he's so confident in his riding is quite surprising. But Vashi moves on because she can tell that she can't really get anything out of him. But when she asks him this last question, it seems like it really pushes his buttons because he gets a little bit sassy. And take a look for yourself.
One final question for you, for Canadians watching right now, Mr. Singh. The Prime Minister keeps getting questions about whether he should remain as leader because of where public opinion polling for his party sits. At the same time, while the Liberals have had, dwindling, to say the least, political fortunes, your party has not been able to capitalize on that at all. Your polls have remained fairly stagnant for the last 3 years. Should people be asking you if you should remain on as the NDP's leader? Are you asking yourself that? And how much responsibility do you bear for the lack of success for your party?
We've brought in the biggest expansion of healthcare in a generation. I'm proud of the work that we've done. I'm running to be Prime Minister of this country, and I'll be leading the party to the next election, absolutely.
So do you not feel like you bear any responsibility for being unable to capitalize on the Liberals' fall from grace among Canadians?
We're going to be running to form government in the next election. I'm going to be running for Prime Minister.
Respectfully, that's not really an answer. Like, are you worried at all about the fact that you haven't been
Respectfully,
able?
that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm running for Prime Minister. I'm running to beat the Conservatives. I'm running to make sure that this country has someone that's going to be on their side.
And I understand what you're saying. I think Canadians understand that you are going to run to lead the party. Do you bear any responsibility, though, for the hill that party has to climb in order to be competitive with the Conservatives in the next election? You have framed the choice as very obvious for Canadians and the consequences as very dire if the Conservatives win, but your party has not been able to compete with them. Is that at all your responsibility?
Well, it's a serious fight. There's no question about it. I'm not in any ways going to diminish the challenge in front of us. We've got a very big challenge. But it's clear that people are done with the Liberals. They're done with Justin Trudeau. And so when people want to replace Justin Trudeau, they're going to have to look to two choices. For federal parties, there's the Conservatives or the New Democrats. They want to change election. They want to get rid of Justin Trudeau, which people tell me they're frustrated with him. There's two choices. Not to say that this challenge is easy by any means. It's a very big challenge. But I want Canadians to know the choice is Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, who are very open. They're going to cut your pensions, they're going to cut health care, and they're going to let big corporations rip you off. Or New Democrats who want to restore hope. We want to build and strengthen our healthcare system and your pensions and stop these corporations from ripping you off. That's not easy. I know that's going to be an uphill battle, but that's the choice in front of Canadians.
I don't know if you noticed, but that vein on his forehead there got pretty aggressive when she asked him that, because she was just throwing salt into those wounds. But his answer, yeah, it's going to be challenging for you guys because people have already made their choice. They're not going to go from the Liberal Party to the NDP. They're going to go from the Liberal Party to the Conservatives because they want something different. You guys have not provided anything different. And as she stated earlier, how can you have any sort of confidence vote or help the Liberals with their votes when you've talked so poorly about them? And another reporter that Jagmeet seems to hate as well, David Atkin, also pointed this out, saying, you guys are not actually going to put forward a vote. You're not going to vote with Pierre for an early election, and just rips into him with basic facts. And you're going to see the faces of everyone around him change drastically when David makes this statement.
They're just letting anyone ask questions these days. Hey, I'm David.
All right, thank you very much for this last one. I appreciate the moderator's sort of indulgence, and I appreciate your patience, Claire, Norm, and everybody else standing there with you for giving Jagmeet the grilling here. I'm going to double barrel it on behalf of Western Canadian New Democrats. Let me put it to you, there's no way you're going to cause a federal election this fall, not a chance, because BC New Democrats would be furious. Way more important to re-elect Premier Eby. Carla Beck has got a chance to beat Scott Moe. Saskatchewan New Democrats would be furious with your caucus if you took away money, volunteers, and resources. So that's the one thing I want to get you to comment on. It's sort of Kyle or Alain Bezzetti's question. And two, one of your senior MPs, Gord Johns, we love Gord, and Gord said this, and I'm going to quote it back to you. My constituents have given me plenty to work on, including infrastructure, shipbreaking regulations, reconciliation, mental health. Quote, my work isn't done, and forcing a third election in 5 years isn't very high on my list. So as I say, two things. Two premiers and leaders out there, they don't want a federal election. Neither does a senior member of your caucus. You're going to vote to support every single government bit of legislation, in my view, this fall. Correct?
Now, I'll save you from having to watch the rinse and repeat answer that he kept giving all conference, but even he made a joke about it by saying this.
And we are ready for an election. And that election is going to be about a choice. I almost want you to say it with me.
So clearly this clown thinks all of this is a joke, but at this point, I don't see how anybody could have seen this press conference and still vote for the NDP or think that he's some sort of a challenge for the Conservatives or Pierre. This guy and his party are currently even lower than the Liberals, who are doing abysmal. So really, where does he think he's going to go from here? But as always, this is just my opinion. I'd love to hear from you guys. So let me know in the comment section below what you thought about all this. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.